Hello, my friends. This is Baal Kadmon, and I would like to thank you for watching and or listening to this podcast. This is part 2 of the Lucifer Conundrum Podcasts. I'm not sure if you watched the first one, but you really should before you watch this video because I lay the foundation for what is to come in this one. So please, if you haven't watched the first one, please do so. The link is in the description box below if you are watching this on YouTube. I do want to say that I had no idea, and I'm not being naive here, I had no idea that the first installment of this podcast about Lucifer was going to take off the way that it did. I mean, I'm almost at 900 views in like 2 or 3 days. So thank you all for watching it and listening to it and giving me the feedback that I need to make these podcasts informative for you. But it's still, it is controversial, and I'm not the type, if you've read my books and you've listened or watched my podcast, I'm not one to cause up trouble for people. That's just not my type. I know a lot of people like drama. They like all that stuff. That's not really why I do these things. I do these things, all these podcasts that may shake the foundation a little bit, because I want to teach these things, because I think modern occultism lacks certain things, and that includes being able to read certain texts in their original. And it's no one's fault. I mean, we tend to want to trust our translations, and that's fine, because that's how I was in the beginning myself, and I trusted the translations until I figured out that they were not correct. So this is going to be an extension of the first podcast, but in this one I'm going to drill down a bit deeper into the word Lucifer and the Greek equivalent to Hiosforos. And I want to show just how these words were used, and that in every single instance they are used as a description and not as a name. Because just so you remember, Lucifer, the term, at least as far as the Bible is concerned, was found first in the Vulgate, in the Latin translation from Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. And they use the term for morning star, they use the term Lucifer. And that is where the term really comes in. That's where it became popular within the Christian tradition as the name of the fallen angel Lucifer, which he is not a fallen angel, nor is he an angel. And so, as I showed in the first podcast, it was not a name, but in fact a description. So I'm going to show you here in this podcast just how true that is, and I'm going to use the same Latin translation to show you how Lucifer is in fact a description and not a name. And in fact, many people don't know, but the term Lucifer is used several times in the Latin. But again, because no one's looking, no one knows. So here we go. I'm going to start looking at the Latin verses that contain the word Lucifer in them. Some I covered in the previous podcast, and I will do so again here. And then after that, I'm going to go into the Greek, and we're going to look at the most common term for quote-unquote Lucifer in Greek is Eosphoros, and I'm going to show you also in Greek that it is used as a description and not a name. I do hope you enjoy this podcast. Here we go. As I stated earlier, the first inkling of Lucifer in the Bible is a Latin translation of Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. And in English it is, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to earth, you who once laid low the nations." So many people, believe that that is a reference to Lucifer, and I make a reference in podcast 1 why that isn't the case. But I'm going to now read it again in Latin and in Greek, just so you can see how they translate the word morning star, son of the dawn. In Greek,
pos excepesen ectu uranu o eiosforos o proi telon sin etrivi is tin in o apestelon prospanda ta ethni. In Latin, quomodo cecedisti, de caelo Lucifer, qui mane uriebaris, coeristi interam, qui vulnerabas gentas.
So that's the base verse that everyone uses to prove the existence of Lucifer as being the one who is fallen from heaven. So as I said in podcast 1, it is a description and not necessarily the name of anyone. Now, before I get into proving this even further, I want to say I'm not on a crusade here. It doesn't really matter to me if you believe in Lucifer or not, but as a teacher of the occult, I feel it's my obligation to provide this information even if it counters 2,000 years of indoctrination. It doesn't necessarily make me popular, and I understand that, and that's not what I'm in this for. It's a risk for me, and I'm okay. But you know what? I sleep well at night knowing that at least I'm doing my part. Okay, enough of the rant there. Let's get started. I'm going to now show you additional information in the Latin and the Greek, but I'm going to start with Latin first. How Lucifer is in fact used as a description throughout the Latin Vulgate. We're going to start here with Job chapter 11 verse 17. And of course I will always read it first in English just so you have a reference. And thy life shall be clearer than the noonday, though there will be darkness, it shall be as the morning. Since we are working with Latin first, here is the Latin of that particular verse. Et quasi meridianus fulgar consurget tibi ad vesperam, et cum te consumptum puteveris orieris ute Lucifer. So, as you can see, Lucifer simply means morning. In the book of Job, as you saw in the translation, it says, and it shall be as the morning. And how do they translate it in Latin? The very translation that made the name, quote-unquote, Lucifer popular is Lucifer. And what is it? A description. It is not a name. But you know what? Let's move on. Let's continue on. So now let's look at Job chapter 38, verse 32. In English, canst thou lead forth the Mazarot in their season, or canst thou guide the bear with her sons? Just so you know, I don't know why they translated this way in English as Mazarot, but Mazarot actually just means garland of crowns. It is an astrological reference. In Latin, look at how interesting it is in Latin. Numquid producis Luciferem en tempore suet vesperum super filios terre consurgere facis. Yeah, you saw that correctly. Luciferem, which is the root word for, Lucifer is the root word of Luciferem. And how is it translated? As you can see in the text in English, it's Mazarot, but really it just means constellations. So it's an astrological reference and not the name of a particular being. Okay, I could leave it at that, but you know what? I'm going to keep on going. Now let's look at Psalms. Now this is a weird one because in the Latin translation and in the Greek for that matter, certain chapters were omitted from the original. So for example, in this case, we're going to be looking at chapter in English, Psalms chapter 110 verse 3, but it corresponds in Latin and in Greek as Psalms chapter 109 verse 3. So let's look at the English verse, and it's Psalms 110, verse 3, and it says, Thy people offer themselves willingly in the day of thy warfare, in adornments of holiness, from the womb of the dawn. Thine is the dew of thy youth. Okay, So now let's look at the Latin version of this, and you're going to be very familiar with the word because it was the same exact version of Lucifer we saw in the last passage. Let us read it. Tecum principium indi virtutis tuae splendoribus sanctorum ex utero ante Luciferem genuite. That's pretty interesting because it says here utero, which is the womb. And the dawn, womb of the dawn, is utere ante Luciferum. So you see, again, Luciferum is a description and not a name. And again, Lucifer is the root word of Luciferum. Now let's move to the New Testament. We're going to go to 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19. In English it says, "And we have the prophetic word more fully confirmed, to which you will do well to pay attention as to the lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts." In Latin, "Et habemus fimiorem propheticum sermonem, qui benefacitis attendentis quasi lucernia lecenti in colliginoso donec dias elugescat et Lucifer oriartur in cordibus vestris." As you can see, yet again, Lucifer is used as a description. So there you have it as far as the Latin is concerned, and that was pretty much every reference in Latin with the term Lucifer in it, including the original of chapter 14, verse 12 of Isaiah, and in every single case, it is a description, not a name. So yes, and it is true, 2,000 years of misinformation. That is exactly true. And let me just tell you, I'm not the only one who has this information out there. Obviously, there are other people. I can't be the only one. So you can do your research and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So now that we got the Latin part out of the way, let's now look at the Greek version of some verses that use the quote-unquote name of Lucifer as Heosphoros. And you will see, even in those cases, they are just descriptions. And, I'm really sorry for people who have believed that Lucifer is an angel and a fallen one at that. But here you have it. This is where the Lucifer idea comes from, and in every instance, it is just a description and not a name. Again, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just giving you the information. Okay, now let's look at the Greek. So we're going to read first Job chapter 11, verse 17 in English, and then we will read it in Greek. Job 11:17. "And thy life shall be clearer than the noonday. Though there be darkness, it shall be as the morning." In Greek, "I δε ευχή σου όσπερ εωσφόρος εκ δε μεσημβρίας ανατέλει ζει ζωή." And as you can see, the term Eosphoros, the common name for Lucifer, is used here as a description, noonday and morning. It has no indication that it is a name of any sort. Okay, let's go to Job chapter 38, verse 12, and let's read that in English. "Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place?" In Greek, "I epi su syndetacha phengos proinon eosphoros dhe iden tin eaftu taxin." As you can see, again, Eosphoros. It is used as a description and not a name. Okay, so now we're going to go to Psalms 110, verse 3. And as I said in the Latin portion of this podcast, that Psalms 110.3 is 109.3 in both Greek and Latin. So we're going to read the Greek here. And just so you know, it is a slight variation of the word heosphoros. It is actually heosphorou, but it's actually the same thing. It sounds the same, right? Heosphorou, heosphoros. So let's read the Greek. Meta su I archi en imera tis dinameos su en tais labrotisin ton agion ekastros pro eosphoru exegenisa se. As you can see, the term eosphoru, which is again a derivative of eosphoros. And I apologize for my American accent when I read Latin and Greek, especially the Greek. I don't use it very often, in conversational, so that's why it sounds very sort of American. So if you're Greek and you're hearing this and you're like, I don't know about that accent, it's like, well, that's because I don't use it as often as you do. So anyway, as you see, both in Latin and in Greek, Lucifer, Luciferam, Eosphoros, they're used as descriptions. They've never been used as a name, as you can see in every single instance, at least as far as the Bible is concerned. And, it always astounds me that the word or the quote-unquote name of Lucifer was taken out of the Latin Vulgate, but yet the Vulgate itself never meant it to be a name. So we're talking about 2,000 years of misinformation, like I said before. And I know that might seem weird. You're like, hey, wait, who are you to take apart 2,000 years of information? And I was like, well, that's how it starts. One person. But I know, like I said, I am not the only one who's done this. I might be the only one in the occult space as an author who's done it. I don't know. I have not read every author in this space, but I'm presenting this here for you. And as you see from podcast 1 and podcast 2, this final installment, that is what it is. I mean, again, I supply you with all the information you need to research this yourself if you really are inclined to do so. And I do know that it's hard. It's hard for some people to see this. And I know it was hard for me when I first realized this. And I realized this, a few decades ago, but only because I could read those languages. But if I couldn't, I would be hearing this for the first time now myself. Like my mother's side, especially her mother, was Catholic. She thought, Lucifer was the, Satan and whatever. So, and she lived to about 80 years old, and until her dying day, that's what she thought. So it's hard. It's hard to reprogram certain ideas. And I think the problem is, and I was looking at a couple of comments the other day on my first podcast, and they were saying, oh my God, so are you saying Satan doesn't exist? No, I am not saying that Satan doesn't exist. I am just saying that Lucifer is not Satan. And I know some people actually agree with that, but perhaps for the wrong reasons. But no, what I am saying is that Lucifer is not an angel, never was. He was never a fallen angel of any sort. And as I say in my latest book, The Devils, Demons, and Ghosts in the Hebrew Tradition, I go into depth of what Satan actually means in the Bible. And it's more like a catch-all term. It could mean several different entities. And I'm not going to go into that here. But, grab that copy of the book. I'm getting the audiobook ready for it. And I really do think you're going to enjoy it. But if you do want clarity on Satan, that's the book to read. So anyway, that's about it. I have to say that I had a lot of fun and a lot of angst creating these two podcasts. And I had an earlier version of these podcasts that I sent to friends of mine. I'm obviously not going to mention their names unless they want to call themselves out. If you want to call yourselves out, do so in the comments in Facebook. Because I was worried. I was worried that this was going to just like cause some problems for people. And, I don't want to cause trouble for people. I understand beliefs are very strong. They dictate a lot of how we live. But I finally had to do it, and I think they were right. I know they were right that I should release this, and that's what I'm doing. So anyway, that's all I have here. I do hope you enjoyed, or I hope you learned something, and I will speak to you soon. So mote it be.